And at Central, we don't just attend church, we are the church. We don't just believe in Jesus, we follow him with everything we have. We don't just show up on Sundays and Saturdays, we hold on, we stand firm, we live boldly for him in everything we do. So good to see everybody. Thanks for starting your weekend, your big game weekend right here at Central. You know, we're in week 2 of our series, Are We Living in the End Times? And we've been diving into the book of Revelation. And last week, Pastor Judd kicked us off with a powerful message. In fact, if you missed it, go back to the Central Church app, go to YouTube, search Central Church. Watch that message because Pastor Judd does an incredible job of setting us up for what we're going to be learning the next few weeks in this series. In fact, I want to cover a couple of the things, remind us a couple of the things that he talked about last week before we dive into chapters 2 and 3 of Revelation. Now, I think a lot of us probably have the question, which is the whole reason we named it this series, are we in fact living in the end times? And the answer to that question is yes. We believe we've been living in the end times for almost 2,000 years. And then the other question we might have is, do we know when Jesus is coming back? And the answer to that question is no. Jesus himself says no one knows the day or hour when these things are going to happen. Not even the angels, not even the Son himself, only the Father knows. And not knowing can make this book seem scary. But the whole theme of this book really comes down to just 2 words. It sets us up for this whole series because the whole theme of the book is Jesus wins. Jesus wins, and that's not a book to fear. That's a book to find hope in. This last week, I took my family skiing, and my kids have grown up skiing their whole lives, but we only get to go a couple times a year, and so they're not expert skiers, but they can hold their own. And we were skiing all day. We were on all the easier runs, the medium level runs, like the greens and blues. We had a great day. No accidents, no drama. It was perfect. But by the end of the day, I told my wife, Laura, I want to go to the back side of the mountain. I want to go to the expert level side of the mountain where the black diamond runs were located, the steep, scary runs. I just want a little bit more thrill, a little more action. And as I'm telling Laura this, my youngest daughter, Cosette, said, I want to go with Dad to the back side of the mountain. Now, my first thought was, there's no way. I haven't been back there yet. I don't know what the slopes look like, the runs look like, the kind of condition they're in. So I shouldn't take my 10-year-old with me. But she was adamant. She was confident that she was going with me. So I finally gave in. I took her to the backside of the mountain. As we approached the ski lift, there is a sign, a handwritten sign that says, advanced skiers only. Many, many, many obstacles, thin and icy coverage. The runs are not groomed. So ski at your own risk. They basically were saying, don't bring your 10-year-old on the back side of the mountain. I'm thinking she's gonna read this sign and she's gonna back out. She's gonna be like, let's go back to the easy, this is perfect. But she reads it, she looks at me, she's like, Dad, I've got this. I'm like, oh great, what have I raised here? This girl has no fear. So we go up the ski lift to the backside of the mountain. As we're getting to the top, 10,000 feet, the wind is unreal. It was some of the worst wind I'd ever experienced. We get off the lift. It's just tossing me and Cosette around as we're trying to find a run. I'm trying to find the easiest way down for her. And there's no easy way down, but we came up to this one run that was called Wolverine. At least it wasn't a scary or intimidating name, right? So we get up to the top of Wolverine and we're looking over. I'm like, what do you think, Cosette? And we can see trees and exposed rock and ice and it's steep. She looks at me again. She's like, yeah, I got this. All right. She's like, do we have a choice? Otherwise we're stuck up here. I'm like, yeah, you're right. The only way out is down. So we got to go. But I said, you need to follow me the whole way down. Do not take your own path. I'm going to help get us through this mountain. We start skiing, and she's doing a great job. She's following me, almost too great. She's so close, I have to speed up to a speed I don't really feel comfortable with, but I have to speed up because she's just doing her little pizza and flying down the mountain after me. She's doing a great job. I kept thinking, I'm gonna look back. I'm gonna see fear on her face. I'm gonna see tears. I'm gonna see a crash. But every time I look back, it's a big smile and 2 thumbs up as she's just flying down the mountain. And we get down to the bottom. No crashes, no injuries. We made it. But I wasn't gonna chance it again. We weren't gonna go back up. We took the lift to the easy side of the mountain. And as we're riding that lift, I asked her, what'd you think of the back side of the mountain? She's like, Dad, that was scary, that was icy, that was windy, that was steep, that was bumpy, that was life-threatening. You probably shouldn't have taken me on the backside of the mountain. I said, first of all, little girl, you were the one convincing me you should go. Secondly, every time I look back, you had a big smile. You were 2 thumbs up. She's like, yeah, that's because as I was going, I was just thinking about I was gonna be able to tell my older sisters that I conquered the backside of the mountain, and she did. In fact, we had to get a picture with her. We had to go back and take that picture the next day because I was a proud dad. That was a proud moment. She pushed through her fear all to conquer something. And that moment with Cosette stuck with me. Her confidence, her determination, her belief that we could conquer it. I mean, isn't that the kind of confidence that we're meant to have in our faith? And the book of Revelation, it can feel intimidating. It can even feel scary at times, but here's the truth. It's not a book of fear. It's a book of victory because Jesus has already conquered. So we don't have to be afraid of what's ahead because we know who holds the future. And Revelation is not about chaos. It's not about destruction. It's about the ultimate renewal of all things through Christ. So that means it's not a story of defeat, it's a story and a promise of hope. And that's why Revelation isn't about predicting a date for Jesus' return, because no one knows. It's about his ultimate victory. And what we can do is we can lift our eyes to Jesus because he gives us confidence for whatever lies ahead, because he's already conquered it. And today, we're gonna be jumping into Revelation 2 and 3. We're gonna be looking at the very words of Jesus to his church. Now, here's what's happening here, is that the beginning of this book, in Revelation, Jesus appears to John in chapter 1 in a vision. This is John, his disciple. Jesus is already ascended into heaven, and now he appears back to him in a vision, and he gives him a revelation. And Jesus tells John, write down everything you see and send it to 7 churches. And that brings us to Revelation 2, where Jesus begins addressing the first church. I want you to look at Revelation 2:1, the first church, the first letter. When we get to the red word, say that out loud with us. But I want you to see that these words are from Jesus. It says this, it says, write this letter to the angel of the church in Ephesus. The Ephesus is the first church he's writing to. This is the message from what? The one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand. The one is Jesus. The 7 stars in his right hand. The Bible tells us that these represent the 7 messengers that are going to carry these letters to the church. Then it goes on to say the one who walks among the 7 gold lampstands. The 7 gold lampstands represent the 7 churches. And this sets the stage for what's coming next. 7 letters from Jesus himself to his church. And these are words spoken with authority. They're spoken to guide, to correct, to encourage his people. Now, something to note here is that these 7 churches, they are real historical churches. They were churches facing intense persecution. They were facing an increasing temptation to compromise. But more than these just being letters to these specific churches, they also offer timeless lessons for every church, for every believer. Because Jesus sees everything, doesn't he? Jesus knows our strengths. He knows our struggles. He knows our compromises. He knows our potential, and he's the perfect one to bring correction because he's walked among us. He's seen it all. So what does that mean for us? Why should we care about these 7 letters written nearly 2,000 years ago? 7 letters to these churches. Well, first, there's a timeless application in these letters. That they're not just for the churches back then. They apply to churches in all ages. They apply to Central Church. But secondly, there's a personal application. As we go through these letters, my hope, my prayer for you in this message is that you're gonna find yourself in them. That these letters aren't just history, that they're a mere reflecting where you might stand in your faith today, where I might stand in my faith. So my ask is, as we go through them, don't just look for information, be seeking, be praying about transformation. Ask yourself, which of these messages is directly speaking to me? Because these aren't just words on a page. These are Jesus's very words to his church, to his bride. It's meant to challenge us. It's meant to encourage us. It's meant to wake us up. And the first wake-up call we're going to look at is this. Don't lose your passion for Jesus. Don't lose your passion for Jesus. You know, it's Valentine's Day this next week. And I saw these posts from these kids that were brutally honest in their Valentines. I want to show you a couple of these. This first one here said, "Dear Rachel, you are the second best teacher ever. Love you." This one here, this is a letter to Ashley. He's asking her to be his girlfriend. This is Andrew asking her, or Kyle asking her to be his girlfriend. And he says, circle yes or no. She circles no. She writes this: "I'm sorry, I already have a boyfriend, Kyle, but when we break up, you're my next choice. P.S. That will probably be in a month or two." Like she knows. That one's not gonna last. This one, "Dear Mom, you are nice, funny, and you love me. I know your hormones are crazy, but I don't mind because you still love me." Kids, they can be brutally honest, can't they? And sometimes that's exactly the kind of honesty that we all need. We need an accurate assessment of where we really are. But we also need a wake-up call to who we can be. And one of the first things Jesus addresses in these letters is the danger of drifting away from a passionate relationship with him. 3 of the churches, Ephesus, Sardis, Laodicea, they were all struggling with a loss of passion for Jesus in different ways. The church in Ephesus, they were a hardworking church. They were a faithful church. On the surface, they looked like they were a thriving church, but Jesus saw beyond their actions and he saw into their hearts. His message to them was, look how far you've fallen. You don't love me. You don't love others like you did at first. This was a church that was doing all the right things, but their love for Jesus had grown cold. The church in Sardis, it had an excellent reputation. In fact, if you asked anybody in the city of Sardis, they would say, that is a great church. That is a strong church. But Jesus, he saw something different in them. He told them, you have a reputation for being alive, but you are dead. Wake up, strengthen what remains of your faith. They were living off of past success and their faith had become stagnant. And then there was the church in Laodicea. They were wealthy, they were self-sufficient, they were comfortable. They didn't think they needed anything. And Jesus tells them, you say, we have everything we need. We're comfortable. We have everything we could ever want. And you don't realize that you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. They had become spiritually lukewarm, which means they didn't completely deny Jesus, but they also weren't fully devoted to him anymore either. And each one of these churches looked fine from the outside, but Jesus, he saw the truth. And listen, this is how it happens, isn't it? Like, we don't just wake up one day and decide that we're not going to be in love with Jesus anymore. No, that kind of drifts gradually. We get busy. We stop spending real time with him. We go through the motions. We start serving without really seeking. We start working without really worshiping. And little by little, our faith, it turns into this routine instead of a relationship. So Jesus gives these 3 churches a wake-up call. He says to the church in Ephesus, return to your first love, the love that you first had. He tells Sardis to wake up before their faith completely dies. He urges Laodicea to recognize their need for him, to stop relying on themselves. And this is what I love about Jesus, because this is who Jesus is. He doesn't just call people out. Jesus invites people back. Look at what he says to the church in Sardis in Revelation 3:3. He says this. He says, go back to what you heard and believed at what? At first. Hold to it firmly. Repent and turn to me again. To Laodicea, he says this in Revelation 3:20. He says, I stand at the door and knock. If you hear my voice and what? Open the door, I will come in. And here's what's interesting about this verse. Pastors, teachers, Christ followers, believers, we like to quote Revelation 3:20 to unbelievers, to non-believers, to those that still need to accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior. We like to say he's standing at the door and knocking, and yes, that's true, but what's interesting about this letter is these are Jesus' words to his church. These are Jesus' words to those who claim to be believers. He's saying, hey, I'm outside the door and you've got it closed. I'm knocking. Are you going to answer? He's saying, come back, wake up, return to the passion you once had. The invitation is still open. So what about us? What about you? What about me? Are we just going through the motions? Are we relying on routine instead of a real relationship? Have we let comfort replace conviction? I mean, maybe you still show up to church, maybe you serve, maybe you read your Bible. But also, if you're honest with yourself, you would say your heart just isn't in it like it used to be. And here's the truth. Busyness for God is not the same as closeness with God. I mean, you can work hard. You can work and you can work and you can work for Jesus and still drift in your relationship with him. Because a faith that's fueled by routine instead of relationship will always run dry. So how do we fix it? Well, we go back to the beginning. You remember what it was like when you first encountered Jesus. Refuse to settle. Don't let spiritual comfort turn into spiritual complacency. Invite him back to the center. If Jesus is knocking at the door of your heart, I don't care if you've been a Christian for 1 day or 100 years. If you feel like that door might be shut and he might be knocking, you open it. You open it. The scariest thing to me in all of these churches, these 3 churches, is that they thought they were doing great. Ephesus was great, busy doing great things in the name of the church. Sardis, it had a great reputation, and Laodicea, they were successful. But Jesus saw the truth. He saw through them to what was really going on. So if Jesus wrote me a letter, if Jesus wrote you a letter, what would he say? Would he say, you're still showing up, but your heart isn't really in it? Or would he say, you think you have everything you need, but you're missing me? Or you have a great reputation, but you're really running on empty, aren't you? The good news is that it's not too late to wake up. Jesus is still saying, return to me, open the door. And if we do, he promises us something greater than we can ever imagine. But we have to ask him to renew our passion for him. And if we do, he will. He promises to renew that passion. So we fall back in love with Jesus if that passion has been lost. But the next thing we see in Jesus' letters to the 7 churches was to stand firm in the face of pressure. This was his wake-up call. Stand firm in the face of pressure. My wife, Laura, several years back, earlier in our marriage, she came home and she said, babe, I really want to go tour some homes with you. I drove past some model homes and I want to go tour these model homes with you. And I said, babe, I don't want to go look at homes that we're not going to buy right now. I don't want to be hassled by a salesperson. Like, this just sounds like an awful idea. It sounds boring. I don't want to do it. She's like, I thought it would be a great date, which I'm now feeling guilty. I'm like, okay, yeah, great date. Maybe. She's like, just come walk these homes with me. We can just dream and walk and have fun looking at these homes together. I said, okay. But afterwards, we're going to go to Bass Pro Shop. I want to look at some boats. She said, we are not buying a boat. I said, exactly. Why are we going to go look at things that we're not going to buy? And I was a big man for like 30 minutes because we did go look at homes. We did end up buying a home and we never went and looked at boats. But I was big and strong for like 30 minutes. I stood my ground. But happy wife, happy life, right? She caused me to fold, to break. But after calling out these churches that had lost their passion, Jesus turns his attention to 3 churches that were facing intense pressure. This is Smyrna, this is Pergamum, this is Thyatira. And these churches were under attack in different ways. The church in Smyrna, it was enduring extreme persecution. And Jesus tells them, I know you're suffering. I know of your poverty. But you have to understand, you're rich. Which is crazy coming from Jesus because to them, they were being imprisoned, they were being tortured, they were being killed for their faith. Yet Jesus, he doesn't promise to remove their suffering. Instead, he tells them, don't be afraid about what you're about to suffer. That if you remain faithful, even when you're facing death, that I'll give you the crown of life. You see, he wasn't calling them to escape their suffering. He was calling them to stand firm through it. Pergamum, the church in Pergamum, the city of Pergamum was known as the city where Satan had his throne. Nice, right? How would you like that to be known about your city? The city where Satan has his throne. We might know a little bit of something like that when we live in a city known as Sin City. But Pergamum, it was a place full of idol worship. It was a place full of false gods and emperor worship. And Christians there were under cultural pressure to compromise their faith, to blend in. And Jesus commends them. He says, you've remained loyal to me. You've refused to deny me, even when Antipas, my faithful servant, was martyred on my behalf. He was martyred among you. But then he goes on to warn them. He warns the church that they were starting to let compromise creep in, that they were tolerating this false teaching that was leading them to sin. Now they weren't fully rejecting Jesus, but they were allowing their faith to be watered down in order to fit in. Thyatira, it was a loving and serving church, but they also were tolerating sin. And Jesus tells them, I know all the things you do. I've seen your love, I've seen your faith, I've seen your service, I've seen your patient endurance. This was a church that was rapidly growing, but they were also turning a blind eye to sin and false teaching. They were allowing this leader, this teacher who Jesus refers to as a Jezebel to mislead, to influence people into sin. Which means this was a church that was standing strong in love but not in truth. And each one of these churches faced different types of pressure, but Jesus' message to all of them was the same. Stand firm. Stand firm. Don't give in. Hold on to truth. To Smyrna, he says, if you remain faithful, even when you're facing death, then I will give you the crown of life. To Pergamum, he says, repent of your sin, or I will come myself suddenly with a sword in my mouth to fight against them. To Thyatira, he says, I gave her time to repent, but she does not want to turn away from her immorality. Jesus is not one to sugarcoat things. He tells them to stand firm and to remove what's pulling them away from him. So then we have to ask the question, what about us? Where are we facing pressure in our own faith? For some of us, it might be direct opposition. It might be family. It might be friends, coworkers that make fun of our faith or ask us to walk away from it, push us to give up on our faith. For others, it might be cultural pressure. Just this temptation to compromise, to stay quiet about what we believe because we don't really want to offend anyone. Or maybe for some, it's allowing what we know is wrong, almost letting sin slide because confronting it just would be too uncomfortable to speak out against. Or maybe we would be seen as too judgmental. But Jesus calls us to stand firm. Jesus never said that following him would be comfortable. He never said that it would be without its challenges, but he did say it would be worth it. And what I'm trying to say, church, is that it's better to stand alone with Christ than to sit comfortably and compromise. It's better to stand firm with Christ. So if you're feeling pressure to back down, water down, give up, don't. Jesus is saying, hold on, stay strong, keep your faith. So we all have to ask, are we staying faithful or are we just slowly blending in? Are we standing for truth or are we just trying to stay comfortable? Or what in our lives do we need to confront instead of just tolerating it? Faithfulness to Jesus isn't about being loud, it's about being firm. It's about knowing who you belong to and refusing to let go no matter what the pressure looks like. Because in the end, Jesus promises that faithfulness leads to victory. So we renew our passion for him. We stand firm in the face of pressure. And then the final wake-up call we see from Jesus in these 7 letters is to keep enduring. Keep enduring because the best is yet to come. After calling out the churches that had lost their passion, the churches that were facing pressure to compromise, Jesus turned to one church that was doing it right. It was the Church of Philadelphia, which, I'm not saying anything about this weekend, but if Jesus had a pick, sorry, Chief fans, no. But the Church of Philadelphia, it's this small church. It didn't have a whole lot of influence. It didn't have a whole lot of great power, but Jesus commends them for doing something greater. He commends them for their faithfulness. He tells them in Revelation 3:8, he says, I know all the things you do, and I have what? I have opened a door for you that no one can close. You have little strength, yet you obeyed my word and did not deny me. This church wasn't the biggest church. This church wasn't the wealthiest church. They didn't have influence. They didn't have status, but they held on to Jesus. And because of that, he opened doors for them that no one can shut. And unlike other churches, the Church of Philadelphia receives no rebuke from Jesus, only encouragement. Jesus tells them, hold on to what you have so that no one will take away your crown. I want you to notice, he doesn't tell them to do or get bigger. He doesn't tell them to do more things. He doesn't tell them to get stronger. He simply tells them to keep holding on. Because sometimes faith, it's not about moving forward. It's about not letting go. And for some of us, life has been harder than we expected. We thought following Jesus meant open doors, smooth paths, but instead, what do we face? We face setbacks, we face disappointments, we face closed doors. Maybe you're doing your best to stay faithful, to just hold on, but you're feeling weak, you're feeling tired, you're feeling overlooked, and Jesus is telling you, just keep holding on because your faithfulness is never wasted. The letter to the Church of Philadelphia teaches us that we don't have to be the strongest, we just have to be faithful. Which, church, hear me, at Central, we're blessed with a big church. You look around our different locations, there's a lot of people, but a big church is not the goal. God isn't looking for the biggest church, he's looking for the most faithful church. At Central, we're blessed that God has given us so much status, so much influence in our city. The ways that we can help out, reach a helping hand out to others, and we try to steward that well. But God isn't looking for status. He's not looking for influence. He's looking for surrender. At Central, we're blessed with incredible facilities, incredible buildings, and incredible production to help bring people to Jesus. But he isn't looking for a church with the nicest facilities, the best buildings, the greatest productions. He's looking for a church with the boldest faith. So with all the blessing that God has given us, the way we steward it is that we hold on. We hold on to our faith. We hold on to our love for him. We hold on to our love for others. We keep holding on and we keep enduring because that is what God is looking for in it all. That's how we steward all the ways that he's blessed us. And we're not just holding on for ourselves. We're making sure the next generation has something to hold on to as well. That's why what we do for our kids and our students matters. CY nights, Central Kid nights, our youth ministries, our student ministries, our student and kids camps. That's why we're always urging you to get them involved in these different ministries, because the world is pulling them away from Jesus. But at Central, we're committed to pointing them to a faith that will last their whole lives. At Central, we're not trying to be the most influential church in the world. We're not trying to be a wealthy church. We're not striving to be hip and cool, which even saying the words hip and cool makes me not cool. But we are a church that will always hold on to Jesus. And when others let go, we hold on. When culture shifts, we hold on. When pressure builds, we hold on. When life gets hard, we hold on, because faithfulness is what moves the heart of God. And Jesus, he tells the church of Philadelphia, I have opened a door for you that no one can close. And I believe that God is opening doors for us. Some of you are standing in front of a door right now. It might not be the door that you were expecting, but it's the one that God's calling you to walk through. Maybe it's a door to perseverance, just an invitation to keep going even when life gets hard. Maybe it's a door to obedience, a call to stop hesitating and just say yes to Jesus. Maybe it's a door to revival, to let go of the things that have kept you far from God, to give your life to Him. The doors that God opens, they don't always look the way we expect, but Jesus promises if we hold on, it will always be worth it. Look at what he says to the church of Philadelphia. I'm almost done. He says this. He says, all who are victorious will become what? Pillars. All who are victorious will become pillars in the temple of my God, and they will never have to leave it. Church, a pillar is strong. A pillar is permanent. A pillar is unshaken. And Jesus is saying those who remain faithful will never be moved. So we don't let go. And at Central, we don't just attend church. We are the church. We don't just believe in Jesus. We follow him with everything we have. We don't just show up on Sundays and Saturdays. We hold on. We stand firm. We live boldly for him in everything we do.